Hello and welcome to In the District. Today we catch up with Bronx County Clerk, Commissioner of Jurors, and Supreme Civil and Criminal Term, Aisha Bravo. She will tell us about her work and why it is essential for civics, justice, law, order, and government to function properly in the borough. I am Javier E. Gomez. Welcome, Comisionada.
Gracias. Thank you.
I'm very glad we're having this conversation, Aisha, because I have always wanted to learn more about the Bronx County Clerk's office. And now I know, because you just told me, that there's more than we think and there's more than meets the eye. So it is actually 3 titles. Please tell me about 3 titles and then let's break them down.
Sure. I'm the Bronx County Clerk. I'm the Commissioner of Jurors, but I'm also the Clerk of Supreme Civil and Criminal Term.
Now, in terms of Bronx County Clerk, what is that and what do you do?
We're the keeper of documents. We keep them secure. We protect the integrity of every document. We do things from passports to notary renewals to notary authentications. We certify divorces. We do DD-214s, which are for veterans. And I'm giving you a very small fraction of the services we provide, as well as keeping records for city, state, and federal government. So I will give you one. We docket the executive orders for the mayor as well.
And these are services that are available for regular citizens, for everyone, as well as attorneys?
Absolutely. Every service we provide is open to the public. We service the Bronx County. There's definitely services that the attorneys take advantage of, which is our electronic filing system for cases. So cases begin with us and end with us.
Where is the office located?
851 Grand Concourse, Supreme Court Building, or what is known as the Supreme Court Building.
And the Bronx County Building as well?
Yes.
So
I also have an office in Criminal Court, which is called Hall of Justice, which is 265 East 161st Street.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about what the county clerk office is and what it does?
That it's completely part of the judicial branch, and it's not. We're housed in the judicial branch. We do provide a service to the judicial branch, but we are executive officers of the county. So we're considered public officials, according to the Constitution.
When were you appointed, Aisha?
January 3rd of 2023.
Now, when I met you, you were a manager at Community Board, I think number 7.
Yes.
And how did you become Bronx County Clerk?
Well, I would say now 22 years of servicing this borough in one capacity or another. Prior to being district manager, I was also the former executive director of the Democratic Party, worked for some elected officials in all levels of government, and it led me here. I think that the Bronx needed someone to represent them at the county clerk's office that was rooted in the county, that knew the county, and that could service the county the way it deserves and needs to be served.
Did you ever think you would ever have this responsibility?
Not in a million years. What I did know is that I wanted to be a public servant to serve this county and change the way we're stigmatized and the way we're served. And I think that I would say that it didn't matter how, as long as I was serving the public. But I am honored to have the word Bronx County next to my name.
How much did you know about the county clerk's office before you were appointed?
I think what the average person knew was working with the judges, the documents. I guess I didn't realize the intensity and the responsibility of the office itself and the amount of services that are non-judicial services that the community should know and take advantage of.
How many people, how much staffing do you need to run this operation?
I would say anywhere from 90 to 100 on the higher side, if I had my way, to properly run it, yeah.
That is a big agency.
Yes, which is divided into 3 sections, 14 departments.
Now, Commissioner, that's title number 1. Now let's go to title number 2. Commissioner of Jurors.
Commissioner of Jurors, everything that has to do with the jury system, from payroll to getting questionnaires. So I'll walk you through that very quickly. Jurors receive a questionnaire, which we get data from 5 different entities: the Department of Finance in the state, Department of Labor, Social Services, DMV, and of course the Board of Elections. And that data, any movement, any changes comes out of that. They get a questionnaire and we decide whether or not they qualify based on that questionnaire. Then they get a summons anywhere from 6 to 18 months within getting the questionnaire potentially. And then they can get picked for a trial. So anything related to that, their payroll, we work with the judges, we work with the district attorney for grand jury as well.
How many people are eligible for jury duty in the borough?
So out of 1.4 million residents of the county, roughly 500,000 get qualified within that pool that we get from those 5 entities. Out of that, we probably qualify about 10,000 monthly, but only about 30% of those respond to the questionnaires. So we have a problem with getting folks civically engaged in this process.
What are some of the challenges that you face in actually recruiting potential jurors?
So I would say, just to add to what I just said, 3% of the borough qualifies, right, based on the questionnaire. Some
Which,
of the challenges,
by the way, it's a very minimal percentage to begin with.
correct. And that has a lot to do, many reasons why with that as well. But the stigma behind jury service is real, right? We all have it, right? We see it as an inconvenience.
Oh, some people open the mail, they see that letter.
Yes, it
It's
has
like
my
the
name on it.
boogeyman has sent the letter.
Yes, yes. And it, the irony, it has my name on the corner of it. So it's destigmatizing. I've always said something that representation matters. And the person who holds the office, it's their job, it's their obligation to destigmatize it. And someone like myself, who was born in public housing, who's a woman of color, a Latina, right, can definitely help convey that message. And the message is that at any point we can be, or our family can be affected by the judicial system in some way, right?
Meaning you can be on either side.
Correct. And being a jurist, right? Having a juror, it's an opportunity to be able to bring your experiences, that community experience, and be able to decide the fate of someone that's being, judged at that time.
Of the legitimate excuses, the real ones, what are the most common impediments for people serving?
Childcare accommodations. Jurors can serve, before they get called for a trial, 1 to 3 days, and in grand jury, if they're called for that, they can serve up to a month. So as you can imagine, it could be a burden if your employer doesn't pay for it. It could be a burden if you don't have extensive childcare. We all know this borough has one of the highest rates of single mothers. So all these things play a role. But my goal is to educate folks on how they can get other services to be able to serve as juror. And that is creating partnerships, which I have an extensive experience with city government, to see if we can at least provide some information for folks to be able to serve.
I know that since you were appointed, you have been making public statements about enhancing accessibility precisely. Could you abound a little bit more on the specifics of that?
Access means many things, right? It's language, we have ADA liaisons in my office, being able to do things online versus coming in person. But we all know the Bronx has a digital divide out of all the 5 counties, probably one of the highest. Making sure that we bring these services to folks in communities. And I think that that's part of access. And more importantly, you said, is destigmatizing the ability to serve on a juror and educating folks, but the messenger matters. So my goal is, I'm putting together an outreach team. So you'll see us in your backyard, at the barbecues, at events, working with elected officials, and just working with New York City, NYC Votes, and agencies like that, to add another layer of what civic engagement is. And this is also an opportunity for them to serve their community.
When it comes to jury duty and jury selection, for what courts are we talking about here?
Supreme Civil and Criminal Term.
Those are state courts.
Those are state courts, yes. And we also do civil court.
For any type of cases from civil to criminal?
Absolutely. So we provide jurors for that.
Now, what would you say to people who get this letter and they grab the phone immediately to call everyone asking, how can I get out of this? What's your message for people like that?
Well, first, don't do that. No, it's understand that, like I said earlier, that you could be at any point on the other side, or someone you love, and you definitely want to have the representation of members of your community, of your demographic, folks that have gone through your experiences, and not leave it up to one person to decide your fate. There's a collective of anywhere from 12 people, or in a grand jury, 23. But you definitely want a jury of your peers.
Now, we're barely discussing 2 of your 3 titles, and I can hear in your words that your work is essential for the city, the borough to exist. Everything would implode because it ties everything together.
Correct.
If there is no justice, no law, no order, no record keeping.
Record keeping is key. We have to preserve the integrity of documents.
There's no accountability for anyone either as well.
Right. Cases begin and end with us. You want to file a lawsuit, it starts at the county clerk. You want to get a copy of that lawsuit, it's certified with my signature. So everything begins and ends at the county clerk's office. So these 3 titles, they have to exist together, but separately.
Now, talking a little bit about your 3rd title. Tell me about it, please.
The clerk of Supreme in civil terms. So we certify, I just said, all the documents that come out of there, all the judgments, I'm sorry, that come out of those two courts.
All
So
the
it's a matter-
judgments, every case,
Yes.
including divorce cases, every divorce case in the borough has your signature, goes through your desk.
Correct. My signature is what makes the document official. Of course, with our certification, building liens, all these things get done through our office. There's the e-file component as well as NYSEF. NYSEF is where the attorneys file their documents. Since COVID, that is a place where they could just docket and then the court picks it up from there.
This is really monumental. Now, what does it take to keep this going?
I guess positive energy, keeping in mind public service at heart, right? I think that if you start to listen to what the concerns are of the public as they're being serviced, I would say that that's the best way to run this office. Camaraderie among the staff, right? They're all public servants. They're dealing with folks that are coming in who are upset in some reason or another. It's being able to understand where they're coming from and being helpful. That's the number one priority for me, is that people are heard and are being serviced the right way and have access to the necessities that they would need.
In terms of jury duty and the selection process, some people might overlook what you can learn just by sitting there about the legal process and even find a new potential career, because it's really fascinating to observe and to participate.
No, it absolutely is. It gives you both sides of the spectrum. You to work with the defense, you get to see the litigant's perspective, right? All these things are definitely a learning experience, and I think it could definitely entice folks to join the legal system in some way, whether that's an attorney, a staff person, a court officer. There's so many career opportunities within the unified court system that I think that our community should be taking advantage of, and that is a huge component of our office as well, is creating that positive environment where they are now wanting to be part of it.
Now, let's talk a little bit about you. You were born in the Bronx. Where exactly?
Kingsbridge Heights section, Bailey Houses, NYCHA development.
Oh, tell me a little bit about your childhood. How did you get involved in law?
I would say I grew up in public housing with abuela, who came here. Unfortunate circumstances led me to leave school at an early age, unfortunately, just to help put food on the table, which is the case of many of our families. And I went on to pursue my degrees. I went to Ostos and John Jay. And I guess the passion and pain of not having government work for us is what drove me into public service, trying to change the narrative for little girls like me. And that led me here. I actually wanted to go to law school. That didn't work out, but I guess God had a plan and I ended up right back in the courthouse. But it's just another facet of serving the public in the most obscure part of government, which is our judicial system. And I'm happy to be there to shed light and bring our community in.
We will continue our conversation with Aisha Bravo right after the break.
Hey, creative family. My name is Timothy Coleman, and I'm the Director of Education here at BronxNet. And I'm standing in BronxNet's Media and Technology Studios in the South Bronx, because I want to let you know about an amazing program that we're bringing back that highlights the creativity of community members just like you. Emerging Media Makers is a show that introduces you to BronxNet's certified producers. They've taken a step in their creative journey by enrolling in BronxNet's media training classes. On this show, you'll get to see the many ways that our certified producers have created a space that's all their own. Emerging Media Makers, your passion lives here.
Welcome back. We are in the district. Today we're talking with Aisha Bravo, County Clerk, Commissioner of Jurors, and Supreme Civil and Criminal Term in the Bronx. Before the break, you were talking a bit about personal history and family. What lessons did you learn about growing up with abuela, with grandma?
To never give up. Family first, and sometimes we get very little and we just have to work to get more, you know. She showed me how to make $1 out of 50 cents, I would say.
She still lives?
She still does, 84, growing strong.
What does she think about where you are right now?
She brags to everyone. She brags to everyone that would listen. I'm happy to have made her proud, and that, you know, all her efforts to help me, you know, were not in vain.
Going back to your capacity as commissioner of jurors, could you help me demystify the process of serving as a juror and responding to the call? How often are people called, and what happens when you respond?
So the process starts with a questionnaire. Once we deem you somewhat qualified from the 5 entities that I mentioned earlier, you get a questionnaire, you fill it out, you send it to us. Jurors by law have to be pulled at random. So once you fill out the questionnaire, you go into a system. And at random is when you receive a summons. You can receive a summons to serve in Supreme Civil, or you can get a summons to serve on the grand jury from that pool. Typically, once you serve, even if you actually don't get assigned a case, you get credit for 6 years. Now you can actually volunteer before the 6 years if you so wish to. And I hope that people now listening to this would get energized to serve.
That's very interesting because there are many retirees or people who have a lot of time in their hands. And again, what you can learn from the process, it's fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. The time can get cut in half, so you can serve now within 3 years. It's just a different form that you have to fill out. And that's also part of our campaign, is create awareness of like, hey, you want to serve earlier, you can. And I think that that's important as well.
Now, when you recall, according to my experience serving, you're brought into a room, there's nothing to fear, and you wait and you hear some testimonies or some statements from lawyers, and then you're interviewed, you're asked questions that pertain either to some of the themes of the cases. Is that an accurate way of describing
Yes.
the experience?
Once you receive the summons, you get called into what we call the jury assembly room, where the jurors assemble right before you see the judge, before you see all of that. We do our own screening questions. You fill out a demographic card, which gives the juror their background as well. You have to watch a video that's called the implicit bias videos, which explains to you what an implicit bias is. We all have our own biases, right? After you watch that, then we send out the names and they get assigned to trials, and some people get dismissed for many different reasons. They may have enough jurors, depending on the question the judge asks us, but at that point we are removed somewhat, right? Once they go to the judge, and then they either get assigned to a case or get dismissed. And there are many reasons why someone can get dismissed.
In terms of qualifications, what qualifies a person to be eligible?
Over the age of 18, a citizen, a resident of the county that they're being called for, and not having a felony.
In my experience, the process of responding to the call has become simpler. In my opinion, you get phone notifications and you can actually call in and listen to a number regarding your time when you're called, the
So
appointment.
in the Bronx, we did that during COVID. We're not doing that right now.
Okay.
So for us, it's in person, or they can fill out the questionnaire online, which a lot of folks don't do. So if you're watching this and you're getting a questionnaire in the mail, you don't have to mail it back. You could actually go online and fill out the questionnaire as well. You can call in, but most of the time, if you're asking for an excusal, that is whether it's medical or personal, depending on what it is, we do require documentation to substantiate that excusal.
And I'm assuming every borough has a county clerk's office.
Yes, within New York City 5, yes.
Very interesting. Now, Aisha, let's talk a little bit about the Bronx. What neighborhood do you live now?
I live in the Allenton section now.
Now, let's talk about causes that move you, because when I met you, you were very involved in community, and as you say, you have over 20 years of government experience. What moves you? What brings you alive?
Pain, injustice, inequities. I feel like, the Bronx has been starved for a long time of what equity is across the state of New York. And I wanted to make sure that I was that voice that they could have and they could trust, especially when I grew up in the same impoverished areas that still remain there. And I wanted to make sure that a light was shed on that, which is no different than I hope to do in this office as well.
What were some of the experiences that you had that you think helped shape the person you are?
Food insecurity, lack of support services in our education system, and living in poor conditions, living in NYCHA developments. I mean, these are 3 things that no one should have to face, especially in a county like ours. So these are the 3 things that have always driven me to pursue public service and fight for our people. Sometimes people get used to what they get, and I remind them that no, we deserve so much more than what we get, and I fight for those causes, whether it's here or in any space. And believe you me, whether this job description guides me in a different direction, I will still be in this direction fighting for my people.
I know you are a mother, and I was wondering how much of this sense of civics do you instill upon your children? And in terms of parents, when do we begin really teaching our children that we have a civic responsibility to our borough, to the city, the nation, and to democracy?
Oh, absolutely. I think voting. If you have an opportunity to take your child into that voting booth, you definitely should. I did with my children. I still do that. I involve them in everything. I share with them elections. My son at 5, my oldest was now 16, he knew who the president was. He can name you the governor. He can name you elected officials. It's exposure, right? It's not transferring the negative experience we may have had with government to our kids, right? We want to break the generational curse, and we can do that by helping them learn our systems. And I think that that's one of the biggest things, and one of the things I like to share with my fellow parents out there is that we need to give them an opportunity to create their own opinions and their positive engagement with government. But I bring my kids everywhere.
So pretty much the earlier we can begin,
Absolutely.
the better.
Yes, they can formulate their own opinions, their own thoughts, and understand that we need to be part of government. If not, we're going to be left out.
Especially in this era of digital technologies in which a lot of children tend to grow up in a bit of isolation.
Right. And we saw that during COVID. It's exposing them to process, even the digital process. We have plenty platforms that, share information. There's Google, there's so many outlets. It's helping your kids be resourceful. I think it's important. But not, again, breaking generational stigmas, I think it's important.
Going back to your 3 titles combined all together, what's next? What new direction? What else you have in mind? What can we expect?
An education campaign, introducing myself to the county, or reintroducing myself to the county in this new wonderful role, destigmatizing what it is to walk into a courthouse serving as a juror, taking advantage of the services we provide. So we're bringing on, like I said, an outreach team. My goal is to partner with institutions that are already doing the work, right? And just expanding on it with our elected officials, with our nonprofits, folks that have a targeted audience that we can work with. Groups like the LGBTA community, bringing in communities that have been disenfranchised from our judicial system, and reminding folks that we are one, we're one Bronx. And I think that is what I thrive, that is what I've done my whole government career, is provide an education for people, but also bringing them the services. So you will definitely see our office in the community. We plan to work with entities that are already serving the public here, and bringing our services out. Extending office hours is a goal of mine as well. We can't begin to think that families just work 9 to 5. They don't have conventional hours. They need to have access to government resources, especially our courts, of course, within reason. So that's definitely a goal of mine, is to introduce the public official role of the county clerk.
Yeah, in terms of the history of the office, I think it was an elected post back in the
Yes.
day.
Up until 1914, when we became the 62nd county, the county clerk, the first county clerk, was elected then. I think it was around 1935 or so that the positions were merged by a constitutional amendment. And then it gave us judicial status. So I'm honorable, so I have the status of a judge, right? I'm not a judge, but I have that judicial status, and it merged the title. So it made me a public official of the county, similar to what you would call the district attorney as well.
And when you do the job right, it's a lifetime appointment?
Yes, it has a lifetime tenure. Yes, it has a 109-year history. I'm actually the first Latina, the first woman to serve in this role. I'm the 12th county clerk.
Congratulations, really. When I read about the appointment, I was very excited. I know how hard you work in community. I'm curious, Aisha, tell me about your Bronx favorites.
Growing up and playing with the hydrant. Now we know it's not good, right? We have to close it. But, growing up, there weren't many outlets, right? It wasn't a digital time, but just spending time with your family, your friends, and playing outside. I think that's where the disconnect is now, right? Folks are just on their phones. But just playing outside, I think that's my fondest memory.
Right now, do you have any hobbies at all?
Serving the people. That's probably what I enjoy the most, and spending time with my children, of course, now that there's a little more time on the table with them. But I love this borough.
What are some of your favorite places in this borough? Anything, restaurants, tourism?
Oh, yes, I love Ajo y Oregano.
Okay.
It's in Belmont. It's one of the Spanish restaurants there. Well, you know, it's heavily Italian restaurants there, so it's definitely one of my favorites. I have many. It's hard to pick just like, you know, one. I love many neighborhoods, and that's what makes us the Bronx. It's diversity. We're such a melting pot, so you can go into communities and have a taco, have Spanish food, have Italian food, have Albanian food, right? So those are like the areas I enjoy. Who doesn't enjoy the Garden, right? It's the largest park space we have. The Bronx Zoo. These are all institutions that I grew up going to. So yeah, the Bronx has a children's museum now. So I love the direction we're going.
In terms of people these days in 2024, who are your role models, your inspirations? I'm assuming abuelita, grandma is there.
I would say right now the people who work at the Bronx County Clerk's office. You know, they've been doing this job without leadership for some time. They've been working really hard, and just the folks that work in the judicial system that we don't acknowledge too much because it's such an obscure part, but they really make justice work, right? I admire them, their tenacity. I'm learning from them. So I would give that to them.
Aisha, in going back to the work you do and your team, there are people who have a complete panic of just entering a courtroom.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
What can you say to someone like that?
It's unfortunate. I think when we think of court, we think jail, right? We think that you're going to get indicted, right? And we have a new administration now in our judicial system that is working on destigmatizing that. And they have put together a huge component on outreach. I know I'm talking about outreach specific to my office, but they're working on overall the scope of our judicial system and communicating and having engagement with communities, especially communities of color here in the county. So I know that there's efforts behind that. But the message that I would send to people, it's not jail. You could definitely get a lot of resources from our offices and get a lot of things done in a one-stop shop. So I would encourage people to no longer see those buildings as frigid and cold, but rather warm and welcoming to resources that can help you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for being with us here today. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And remember, you can always watch this program anytime, anywhere, and also share it with others on bronxnet.org and on YouTube. Also, make sure to follow BronxNet on social media to keep informed about who we'll be talking to next in this program. I am Javier E. Gomez. Until next time.